Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming today. I know everyone is interested in the apparent number, we'll say for right now apparent, number of gunfire or shooting incidents that we think we're seeing in the month of January this year. And I know you've all been asking for data. I appreciate your patience. This data is harder to extract than you might realize. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then I will get into what we think the data shows and what we think we can't tell from the data, and then we'll take some questions and answers from you. I'm sure you'll have many of them. So this January, there's been anecdotal evidence. I think you folks have noticed it. I think, patrol has noticed it. Detectives have noticed it. We've all noticed that we've been very busy and that there have been many incidents of shots fired. We've had 4 homicides. We've had about a half a dozen other, I'll call them assaults for right now, shootings where people were shot at or hit that weren't fatal, but where detectives are working those cases. People are asking, are there more of them? Is this a trend? So we're trying to dig into that. I think what it may not be apparent to a lot of folks is we don't track. We don't track shootings by that category. There isn't even a category called shootings. We track categories of crime. We track homicides, sexual assaults, robberies, burglaries, assaults, things like that. Gunfire and shooting can be a mechanism to create a homicide, to create a robbery. But the shooting itself isn't a category of crime, so it's not tracked in that way. It's like saying, how many yellings did you have out there? Well, anger is a contributor to many crimes, but we don't necessarily have a category that we can track that well. So that's what we had to do to dig into this data. And the other thing that I think may be at work here to some extent, although I think you will see that we are probably high in our numbers for November, for January compared to some other Januaries. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself there, but we're also using social media and other ways to tell the public about everything that's going on in town in ways that we didn't used to. So while, for instance, our homicides were way, way low, one of the lowest years in the last 20 years, which is good news. People know more, though, about all the associated activity that didn't end up being homicides, but people may have the idea that things are more dangerous in Anchorage because we're talking about it so much more than we used to. So extracting that, there's what the data says, then there's our ability to communicate, and I think maybe a lot of these things are colliding right now. So let's look at, let's talk a little bit about what I mean by shooting for the purposes of today's discussion. What we did is we took all the data for this month, January 2015. We compared it to January 2014 and January 2013. Okay, I don't know what you can tell from comparing 3 one-month periods of time, because I'm not saying you could take 1 month's worth of data and extrapolate it and say the whole year is going to look like this. For instance, in terms of homicides, last year there were 4 months of the year where we had 0 homicides. So if you had taken one of those months and extrapolated it, you would say there would be 0 homicides for the year. Conversely, we had a month in 2013 where we had 4 homicides, just like January this year we had 4 homicides. Does that mean we were going to end up with 48 homicides for the year? No. Sometimes you just get a bad month. So do we know if this is a bad month yet or not? Is it just a spike? Is it a trend? Only time will tell. We'll only know that after we've put some distance between us and this month. But, so our first exercise, with all those limitations, was just to check this month against the previous 2 Januaries and see what it looked like. I'm not sure how much you can draw from that, but so we did that. The next thing we did is try and make sure we had an apples-to-apples comparison. What do we mean by a shooting? A shooting could be a homicide. A shooting could be an accidental discharge. A shooting could be somebody doing target practice. A shooting can be revelers popping rounds in the air. It could be kids shooting at road signs. It could be a gang drive-by shooting. It could be a domestic violence assault. It could be all over the map. So we wanted to figure out a way to define it for purposes of today's discussion. What we decided to do is take all the reports of gunfire where there was some sort of credible evidence that some gunfire occurred. So we probably went to a whole bunch of calls where people reported something could be gunfire or loud popping, could be a backfire, could be fireworks. And if we went there and found nothing, for purposes of today, we didn't count that, okay? What we counted was when people said things like, I heard the car screech, I heard 4 rounds fired, cops went out there and they found a shell casing, or they found a bullet hole in a window, or they talked to a witness that said, I stood right here, it was a red car, I saw the gun. There was some sort of corroboration indicating that yeah, some sort of aggressive gunfire was going on, okay? So that's a smaller subset. And so with that, I will tell you that for the month of January, we had 31 of those occurrences up to date. Obviously, we didn't go to the end of the month. It goes the 1st of January to, what's today, the 28th?
Through the 28th.
To the 28th. So it's compared to the 1st to the 28th of 2014 and the 1st to the 28th of 2013. So we had 31 of those. We had 12 of them in 2014, and we're going to give you these numbers. And we had 14 of them in 2013. So we went from 14 to 12 to 31. So this month is double, a little bit over double Januaries for the last 3 Januaries. That doesn't mean that we don't know. We haven't looked at December. December might have been down way low at 12. We don't know. So we only know to date, we're going to tell you about the 3 Januaries. Of the 31, 4 were homicides. You know about those. And approximately a half dozen of them, I don't know the exact number, but around 6 are other kinds of assaults where we actually have cases that we're working, assigned to detectives, and we're attempting to or have arrested folks in those cases. So that's roughly 10 of the 31 then have generated criminal cases. The remaining 21 are occurrences where we believe somebody fired off some rounds or some gunfire. We have no idea what or why or what was going on with those events. So, what do we think is up? That's probably a question you're going to ask. We're beginning to dig into the data to see if there's an explanation. Of course, so here's what we think we know. I'll back up a little bit. Here's how we ran the search. You have to understand this to then know what I'm about to tell you. Since we don't have a category called shooting, as I described earlier, we go through the CAD system and we do a word search. Every time the word shots, shooting, gunfire, some other keywords comes up, we pulled that case and read it. Okay, so we looked at a lot of cases. A lot of them were things like no shots fired here, but the word shots was in there. So we eliminated all the stuff. We pulled out suicides, we pulled out accidental discharges, all that other stuff. And then we read those cases and read what they were about. And even in the cases where we didn't have a suspect and couldn't work a case, couldn't open up a criminal investigation that went anywhere, we just kind of logged the call and moved on. You can read the officer's comments in the comments fields, and a lot of those comments had something to do with drugs. Okay, a apparent drug deal, complainant says it looked like drug deals and there was shots fired and some screaming and the cars went away. Some kind of indication that drugs were at work. We saw those comments a lot in the calls this month. And I think, Brian, if I understood what you told me earlier, percentage-wise probably more than what you saw in the comments in 2013 and 2014. Is that correct? So they seem to be drug-related. And that's kind of anecdotal, and that's really loose, and I can't nail that down better than that. But I can tell you this, of the 4 homicides this month, all of them are connected to drugs. All of them are connected to marijuana as well as other drugs. You can make whatever you want out of that. The other half dozen that were not homicides but that were working as assaults, one of them has to do with a mental illness situation. The other 5 or so, drugs and marijuana, every one of them. So something's going on in the drug world right now. That seems to be a common connection here from what we can tell from our first look at the data. So I can tell you that the next question is probably, so what are you going to do about it? So, we've taken a look at the data. We met this morning. We're coming up with different ideas of what we can do, but this is what I can tell you for sure that we're going to do, because some things are under our control and we can do them immediately. We've decided to combine 3 of our special units for a short period of time, maybe a week or 2, depending on how things go, and take them off their normal assignments. Don't worry, Ed, I'm leaving the SROs alone for right now. But we'll make an in-house task force out of them and put them on this detail. We're going to copy a federal initiative that was done back in 2007. We'll start by working with the Fusion Center. We know who the shooters are, and as you know, in 10 of these cases, through the Fusion Center, because of that, we know a lot of their associates. So, we're going to be going out contacting all those people, serving warrants like crazy, taking one thing from one step to the next, shaking down everything that moves on the street, and putting a lot of pressure on the drug world and the criminal element that moves around at night, and try and suppress this. The last time we did this, it was a federally funded initiative. I wasn't here at the time, but I understand that in a few days' time, they put many people in jail, seized lots of guns, lots of drugs, and so we're going to do that on our own starting next week. And we've already reached out to some federal agencies here in town and pitched an idea of another federally funded interagency task force like we had in 2007. We're getting some good indications that might happen, but of course it's early on and there's no commitments yet. But ultimately what I think we'd like to do is see if we can get some federal funding to create a temporary multi-agency effort and hit it again after we can return our special team, our special unit guys back to their normal assignments. So that's the first place we're going to start. So I think I've got out everything I need to, but I'm sure I've forgotten something. So what are your questions? Maybe we'll flesh things out from here.
So you have suspects in all the 10 shootings that you mentioned happened this month?
I don't know if I can go that far. I know that there's enough. I know there are suspects in a bunch of them, and I know that they are workable cases. That typically means we've got ideas of where to go, but I don't know I could categorically say we have a firm suspect in each one. We might, but I just don't know.
So I thought you said you knew who the shooters were. Did you say that? Did you just say that you know who the shooters are? Is what you said before.
Oh, if I said it, I probably misspoke. What I'm saying is we know a lot of people in a lot of these cases. Okay, I don't want to say in 100% of the cases do we know 100% of the people, but we know a lot of people in these cases. Okay, some are suspects, some have been arrested already, and we know who their associates are, and we know a lot about what they do and where they go, and we're going to dig into that, and we know how to do that kind of work, and we can put pressure on that part of society and we hope suppress some of this activity.
You mentioned, not you, but Castro had mentioned before that at least one of these cases appears to be connected to possibly another one, and now you're saying that a lot of them are drug related. Do you feel like they're all connected at this point, or how?
No, I can't say that. No, I can't say that.
Was this morning's homicide connected to any of these other crimes?
Not that I know of. You know, and this one is so new that I think there's less that we know about that at this point in time. Some of them are definitely connected to each other and have a running history. But I don't know that all of them are connected to each other than they seem to be, you know, they seem to be in the drug world.
So some have been retaliations for
I
others?
think that's fair enough to say, although I don't want to get into case-specific information.
Um,
And I got to tell you, I'm not the detectives, and I don't know the ins and outs of each one of these specific cases. But so I'm kind of keeping a general flavor of things for you.
So you said marijuana was involved in a lot of these shootings. I mean, is there a concern that with like marijuana legalization then, that this could get worse as marijuana becomes legalized?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and I was wondering how to answer it. I don't have any proof. I don't think I could make the claim, so I'm not going to do that. I want to be very clear that I don't like talking about wild assumptions that I can't back up. So I'm not saying I can back this up. But it does make me wonder, and cops wonder. I mean, that's what we do, is we sit now, why would we be seeing this? I do wonder if there's some jockeying for position. If the folks out there are looking at the potential for a change in landscape and wondering how they fit into it, you know, and they're trying to maneuver, I wonder if that's not part of what's going on. I don't know that it is.
And then the 2007 initiative, was that like the Clean Streets initiative? Is that what it was?
Something like that. We call it spring cleanup or spring clean or something like that.
Is it possible that arrest made with those people are getting out of prison? I mean, would that be long enough?
Boy, I'd have to dig into that one to know. I wouldn't want to say that one off the cuff.
I want to,
The release just went out about reopening the case into Isla Hansen or seeking information about that, your old case. I'm wondering if that came from you guys looking into the data on shootings.
The case was never closed, it's always been open.
Okay.
We're just asking for your information because it's been over a year.
I want to ask, you know, 2 of these shootings happened in parking lots. The one on Sunday was, I think, around 9 o'clock, and I know I was out at Walmart at that time, not too far. It's concerning because people are out at these hours and they're innocent bystanders. What can people be doing, you know, to protect themselves? What kind of things should they be looking out for?
You know, I think people could watch for suspicious activity. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows what a drug deal looks like, and a drug deal can look like a lot of things, I suppose, but people that are parked funny, people that are furtive movements, exchanging hands, you know, things like that. If you see what you think is a drug deal, I would get away from it. I would call up dispatch and report a possible drug deal or suspicious activity, you know, give us descriptions and so forth. But I think the bigger thing that we're seeing that I'd like to ask the public about is when you see, you know, report this stuff, don't be afraid to give us the information. If you're a witness to something that actually happens, please get in touch with us and give us the information. What we're really vexed with right now is the participants in these things are not cooperating with us. We're not getting information from them in the ways that we normally do. And we need the public's help. So if a member of the public sees something, we really need to know what that is. And if they have information on any of these events that they're reading about in the media, we need to know about that as well.
Why don't you think they're being cooperative? Is there any reason as to why this is different than, you know, something you've experienced in the past?
Well, I don't think it's unusual for drug dealers to be tight-lipped and not give us information. They typically say they're walking down the street minding their own business and they just got shot in the leg. I mean, that's what you get. And these seem to be drug cases, and so that's the reaction we're getting. You know, other kinds of cases, people generally talk, domestic violence cases or armed robberies or liquor store robberies or whatever, you know, people tell us what they see. But these are drug dealers dealing with drug dealers a lot of the time, at least it seems to me that's what most of this is. And it's a tight-lipped crew, and they're not we're not getting very much out of them. We're still progressing in our cases, but we're having to make them in other ways.
Is there any indication that this is in our schools? I mean, we've got Superintendent Ed Graff here, and he's not typically at these kind of press conferences. And we know that one of the suspects, or somebody that's been charged, was just 14 years old. So is there any indication that this is more than just adults, that this is an issue that's in the schools at this dangerous of a level?
I haven't seen anything like that. I mean, undoubtedly, there was the one case with the 14-year-old. I don't know if he was one of ASD's students or not. I can't answer that question. But I'm not aware that any of the rest of these cases are about juveniles like that.
What are the other drugs?
Oh, the gamut. A lot of meth, some cocaine, pills. It varies from case to case.
What about heroin?
You know, I don't have the information. I wouldn't surprise me a bit, but I can't tell you that for sure.
Sir.
You'd have to ask the detectives on that.
Everybody likes to pull out the numbers of how many were shot, injured, deceased. Do you have any statistics that show that out of this year's events so far with injuries by gunshot, how many were actually totally innocent bystanders? I figure it's got to be an extremely low amount of people.
You know, that would be case-specific information that you'd have to get from the detectives. I have not gotten the impression that we have a bunch of innocent bystanders who've been hit, but I can't say categorically that not one of these does that apply. It's not my sense, taking the totality of it. And the other thing, this is crazy as it sounds, and I want to be very careful about it. That's why these numbers we put out, it may be imperfect, but we're giving you the number of events, the number of case numbers, if you will, for these incidents, okay? The way I was explaining it to somebody the other day, I don't know what a shooting means to you, and it might mean something to you, and you might take it as meaning something different. If you had two people, two different individuals, in the month of January, fired 20 rounds at 10 people, hit 5 of them, killed 3. How many shootings do you have? 2, 3, 5, 10, or 20? You know, are we counting bullets? Are we counting victims? Are we counting injured people? Are we counting shooters? Are we counting the event that occurred? So it's really easy. You know, I say, well, we had 1 shooting. Somebody else says, well, we had 12 victims. You know, so what we're counting for purposes of today, for this discussion, is the number of events where shooting occurred. That's what the count is, the 31 I'm giving you today. And so I'm trying to keep this discussion apples to apples. And so comparing this month to the other months, that's the way we looked at it there too. You could make this data look any way you wanted, depending on how you did it. And if you weren't careful, you could be counting victims on this month and occurrences next month compared to bullets the next month, and you'd be all over the place with it. So that's why it took us a while to get the data together. It's not that we didn't want to bring it to you. It's just that we had to get our minds around it and figure some way to articulate it in a way that was that would make some kind of sense. I could make this number way bigger if we threw in all the possible fireworks calls and everything else that we could never track down. Or I could make it smaller by saying, limiting it to only the place where we had a live body or a dead body saying, yeah, I was shot. So I don't know that this number is the perfect way to do it, but it seemed the most reasonable way to present the data to you.
Chief, a lot of people want to know if this is gang related. Can you speak to that, and people want the gang task force to be reinitiated? Can you talk to that?
Some of it does appear to be gang related, from what I hear from the detectives. The gang task force was one guy, and that mission has been taken over by we passed it from him to the Fusion Center. I had a discussion with the Fusion Center earlier this week, and I do think we can do better at handling the gang numbers over there, and so I think we're going to be working on that.
I'm sorry, what's the Fusion Center?
Fusion Center is an interagency task force that does criminal intelligence work.
Federal?
No, it's here in Anchorage. It's troopers and APD and others, and analysts, military people, and so forth.
Do you guys have like an age demographic of like the people that have been involved in the shooting?
Pardon me?
Like an age demographic of people who've been involved in the shooting?
I'm sure we could, of the ones that we know,
The ones that you
yeah,
know?
we could put it together. Haven't done that yet, and I don't know the information, but the detectives would know all that. I mean, it's possible, yes.
All the homicide victims have been very young adults.
Okay. Do you guys have like an age on the guy who was murdered this morning?
We're still notifying next to kin, so we'll put his age and name out next to him into that process.
Okay. We've got a couple arrests that have been made in some of these cases. How do you feel the department is doing in solving these cases?
Oh, I think we're doing pretty well. I don't know off the top of my head what our solve rate is on these cases for this month today, but my general sense is we're wrapping them up, and we expect success in most or all of them. This morning's is still a bit young, but I think we know where we're going on the vast majority of them.
You mentioned this task force. Is there a name for it? What are we going to call this new task force?
I haven't had a time to think of the name. I've been too busy trying to crunch your numbers. Would you like to name it for us?
Oh gosh, no, that's too tough. So this task force, is it already working, or is it about to start working like this Friday? Is everybody just meeting to figure out their position, and how far along in the process?
Well, we hatched this plan about an hour and a half ago, so we're going to have to notify the employees and work on their schedules and work with the union about whether or not we're changing the days off or not. I don't know any of that yet. We're just getting started on it. I think the goal is to get started next week after the weekend.
Approximately how many people do you think are going to be part of that task force?
Oh, maybe 10 to 15, I think, off the top of my head. That I could be off by a little bit, but
Just sum up their goal one more time then.
pardon me?
What's their goal?
How can I say this in a professional and nice way? We're going to suppress violent crime in Anchorage by running down the known players and arresting as many of them as we can, serving warrants and generating cases. Without getting into too much detail, if you've been on ride-alongs, maybe you know, but you stop every suspicious person who's moving. You start serving warrants. You start contacting your known drug dealers in town. You start talking to people. You start making arrests. One thing leads to another, and we just need to get some people on that right now and beat these numbers back down. And it usually works. And what you can do, what experience seems to show, it happened again in 2010 after the Jason Allen shooting, when we really pulled out all the stops and stopped doing other work and redeployed around that. We made a lot of progress on a lot of violent crime, and locked a lot of people up, and things got very quiet for a while. Then people go back to their regular jobs, and after a while things, get back to another level where it's a problem again, and then we go hit it. So I guess it must be time to do that again.
We need time for one more question, Chief.
Okay? Yes?
Up until this point, it seems like we haven't let the public know that these are drug-related. You say they are, we're going to spread that message. Anything else you can add to that to let people who aren't involved in these but could have them happen near them, how they can be more prepared, not just looking out for transactions, but how can they, what can you tell them to reassure them that these are drug-related, you're probably not going to be a victim, carry on.
And just going off of that, what he's saying, also protecting your home. I know on Tuesday, some shots were fired into homes where there were children. And what can people be doing?
Most of this, or almost all of us, appears to be involving the drug underworld. There aren't a lot of innocent victims. There may not be any innocent victims. I tried to answer that question before. I can't positively say that, but my sense is that it's not the case in this latest string. It's not typically the case. All these home invasions that you've been hearing about for the last year or two, those aren't random events where nice suburban families are on the receiving end of this. So if you don't live in that environment, you don't live in that culture, you're really not statistically in much, if any, danger. It is not impossible that you could get in the crossfire somehow. I don't know that there's any magic way to make sure that didn't happen. The family that moved in the apartment underneath this crowd from the other night didn't know that they were moving into an apartment underneath this crowd. I don't know that anybody that there's any way to know that. We don't have a crystal ball. But I think if you are prudent and lead a normal life, for lack of a better term, go about your business, you're probably in little danger of falling victim to this kind of activity. But that being said, it's always good to keep your wits about you and be aware of your surroundings. And please, if you see something that's suspicious, if something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't right. So trust your hunches and give us a call.
Or what would you say?
Well, apparently I'm going to be dealing with you guys over these shootings, so no, we're not. I said we're going to serve arrest warrants. Those are warrants that are already in existence.
Right, but you also mentioned shakedowns, going after suspicious people.
You have to do something to call attention to yourself.
Right.
Okay? We don't profile people. We don't stop people based on what they look like. We stop people who are doing things suspicious. And there's a threshold for that. It's called Terry versus Ohio. And the police know where that line is. And, we will follow the law and respect people's rights. But if you're up to no good, you may be talking to our little task force. Okay, thanks.